And we're back with our video sit-downs. We've moved to the 35th District, 35th District State Representative position number 1. And the man on the camera is Dan Griffey.
Good morning.
Diedrich Allen off camera. And Dan, first take a couple minutes to briefly tell everybody about yourself, your background, and why you are running, and why you feel you are the best candidate for the position.
Good morning, and thank you, Diedrich and Mason County Web TV, for putting this on. It's very important to be informed with who you're voting for in this election. My name is Dan Griffey. I'm a lifelong resident of the 35th District. I spent my entire 43 years here. I'm married. I have 3 wonderful daughters, and I'm so proud of a brand new grandson now. I tell everybody you should start out as grandpa or grandma. Don't want to leave you ladies out. It's very rewarding. I'm a professional firefighter, and I have been for 22 years. Total service in the fire service is 27 years. In my 43 years, I've seen a difference and a change in my county and my district. We used to be teeming with rural jobs, values, and traditions. We had an ability for our sons and daughters to stay in our community, help build it, and now they have a tough decision whether to leave our community totally or be stuck to commuting. I think a lot of that is based on good-natured, poor regulatory policy by our elected officials, so I decided to run. And I'll explain some of that. The Growth Management Act has crippled our ability to develop our community and grow business. We need to grow business so we can grow the job opportunities for our citizens. I think it's time that we step back and say, I respect your private property ownership rights. I respect your ability as an entrepreneur to start a business, and I respect the fact that you want to do something in your community to build it. It is time now that we understand that we must do something to turn this around, not accept the declining nature of the job market in Mason County, and say that our bright future is ahead of us. Thank you so much.
Everyone says that their top priority is fully funding education. How do you plan to reach that court-ordered mandate, and can it be done without sacrificing other programs? If cuts have to be made, how would you determine what to cut?
That is a very good question. So the McCleary decision, I think, gives us a very, very good opportunity. And what I mean by that is it gives us an opportunity to holistically look at education in the state of Washington. The first portion of the McCleary decision that the state funded, which is about $1 billion, and it was a good funding, was transportation. So it took off some of the burden on local levies to support transportation. The next thing that I think we need to do is look at deliverables. What can we get with funding, with more funding? And what opportunities do we have in the future? And what I mean by that is our schools are burdened down, just like most of us are, with overzealous regulatory burdens. We require standardized testing that take up a lot of the school year. I favor right now supporting our teachers by coming up with a metric or a testing metric. We use our chapter quizzes that are solely based on our curriculum. We do our end of quarter testing that is based on our curriculum, and we use that as a decision factor whether somebody is low capability or somebody is high capability. I think creatively we can reduce the state burdens on the citizens and increase our flexibility and performance in the classroom. The governor has called for a 15% across-the-board tax cut, or not tax cut, excuse me, 15% across-the-board budget cut for all departments in the state of Washington. That's going to put pressure on the legislature to raise taxes, and I think in this tough economy where we're still recovering, the increased tax pressure is going to hurt this slowing economy. So what I favor is a priorities-based model, where we set up clear priorities, fund education first in the budget instead of funding education last in the budget. Education is used as a political football in the very end of the legislative session to pull at the heartstrings of the citizens. Let's set up the priorities together in Washington State. What is our top priority? I think it should be education. An educated electorate is what all of us need and wish for, so we can have those skilled workers to build Washington State and Mason County and the entire 35th District. Through the priorities model, I think we can say that education's first. I think we can say transportation is next. But all of them have huge regulatory burdens on them that cost the citizens a lot of money. I think if we take a very weighted approach to determine what our priorities are together as citizens and fund those priorities, I think we can fully fund education and our transportation system and take care of those who can't take care of themselves, our elderly, our children, and those who have physical and special needs. We can do that and still not raise taxes on the citizens of Washington State.
Okay, transportation is another priority, and there's been a lot of talk about the need to reform the state's Department of Transportation. How would you accomplish that reform?
So this has got to be a bipartisan approach. First of all, we have to identify that wasting millions of dollars on projects like, I'll do the Columbia River crossing as an example. Washington State and Oregon have been trying to work on a hybrid project where we would do a second Columbia River crossing in Vancouver. We have to identify that it was ridiculous that we spent nearly $300 million on studies, just studies, before we shoveled a single shovelful of dirt. Other states have great models. We can look to the other states, Arizona for one example, where they were able to get a similar project off the ground, completely funded and built for around $600 million. We've got to identify that we have great people in DOT with great ideas that we can't burden them down any longer with state-imposed studies, endless studies. We can protect the environment and build great infrastructure projects and save a lot of money if we smartly, very smartly, and in a weighted measure, reduce the regulatory burdens, the tax burdens on our state infrastructure projects. Just one example, DOT has to pay sales tax on all of the projects that they enter into. A tax on a tax is kind of a messy situation as far as I'm concerned. We need to be smarter about how we implement our regulatory efforts and actually develop our projects instead of just studying them.
What are the top transportation needs in the 35th District?
Well, there's quite a few transportation needs. Holistically, the state of Washington must have an inland rail system. We need to be able to move freight quicker. Other states along the Gulf of Mexico, because the Panama Canal has been widened, have invested heavily in freight mobility. The 35th District has to have an ability to help move that freight, and the way we have the ability to move it is on the surface streets. A Belfair bypass and a Mason County bypass, a secondary road through Mason County, should be a top priority so we can move freight. Highway 3 is incredibly clogged, and those of you who drive it regularly understand the choke points of Belfair and Shelton and in the middles where we have small businesses. You understand those choke points, and the time to move freight in Washington State is dollars. So every time that a truck is idling, it's costing our businesses and our freight movers money. So we need to make sure that we are smart about how we move our freight, understand that we have to realize that we are losing the battle as far as freight mobility. And once we understand that, we know that we can prioritize the funding of those projects, and we can prioritize that as something that will help maintain our freight income that we've enjoyed for years because we're the closest in the Pacific Rim to the Japanese, Chinese, Southeast Asian markets.
Do you support a gas tax?
I do not support a gas tax. If I can elaborate on that, the governor has put together a task force, and this should be exceptionally concerning to those of the rural districts, together a task force to discuss the possibility of vehicle miles traveled tax. What that tax looks like, would look like, we don't know now, but I can tell you what it looks like in other places where they've done the studies. You would go, every time you license your vehicle, you would have to do an odometer disclosure to the Department of Transportation. And based on the number of miles you've driven, you would have to pay a tax. Well, that's going to be terribly burdensome on the rural districts like mine, and I will absolutely stand up against it. One of the concerns we have is our governor says that, or believes that he can implement that policy by executive order. And I don't think that's the right decision. I think the governor needs to stand up and work with the citizens, especially the citizens of the 35th district, who we have transit transportation options, but they're not as good of an option because they're not big enough to have the true to and from commuter capabilities that King County, Pierce County, Kitsap County have. Thanks.
What is your position on tolls?
We have got to prioritize our infrastructure projects in Washington State and quit relying so much on tolls. An example, in King County, there's the floating bridges. We built one floating bridge that had a toll, and then there's a floating bridge just a few miles away that doesn't have a toll. The legislature found out that the citizens decided to drive on the bridge without the toll instead of driving on the bridge with the toll. We got to understand that, we have to understand that the citizens pay some of the highest gas tax in the state, in the nation, that our tax burden is very high. We have to prioritize transportation spending. We must liberate the our transportation department from very expensive regulatory burdens, and among those are endless costly studies. We just have to look at the Big Bertha project to understand that we really have a priorities problem in Washington State. The 35th district very rarely gets any infrastructure, transportation infrastructure monies, and everything you see from the top of the Space Needle seems to get all the funding that they ever need. We can be smarter about how we fund transportation and do a better job with less money.
So kind of the follow-up question to that is, are tolls a better way to get projects funded? You kind of answered that, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that that's a poor way to get, I mean, it is a way to get the projects funded, but if you look at the Narrows Bridge, any of you that commute over the Tacoma Narrows Bridge understand that those tolls are going up and up and up, and it seems to be never ending. We have to move away from the toll model. We absolutely have to move away from the toll model and get to fully funded state projects. One of the problems is our debt ceiling that we have in Washington State. It's a problem, it's a blessing, and it's a curse. The blessing is it keeps the legislature from running wild on what they borrow on us, the citizens of Washington State's good name. The burden is funding long-term infrastructure projects is hard to do because we're always up against the debt ceiling. Thank you.
With the planned widening of Highway 3 through Belfair, in your opinion, will the Belfair bypass still be needed? If so, how can we get the bypass funded and built?
So I've heard a couple ideas out there. One of the ideas is fund it through the capital budget. So the capital budget is a budget process to where they can give money, so the state can give money directly to different groups. And I think the best one to develop it is if we develop it through Mason County's transportation project. So we go to Mason County with a capital fund, amount of money out of the capital budget, and give it to Mason County as a project. I think the Belfair bypass is absolutely necessary, and the biggest reason it's necessary is it allows us to gain access to industrial land, industrial developable land, commercial developable land, and it also gives us an ability for Belfair to grow and spread its wings a little bit. If you look at Belfair right now, it doesn't have a good road structure. It doesn't have an real ability to expand, and all of the small commercially expandable lots are getting bought up, and pretty soon all of those lots will be gone, and we won't have an ability to expand Belfer any longer and grow job opportunities, good job opportunities, and low-cost housing opportunities.
Economic development, creating jobs, and attracting industry and business are also priorities. Do you have a plan to help create jobs and attract business to the 35th District, and can you summarize that plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to propose creating innovation zones akin to what they did in New York. New York City, not New York City, New York State has identified areas that need growth and need to attract businesses. And what they've done is they say that if in this geographical area you, the business owner, decide to move your business and develop that new business, we're going to give you a 10-year tax moratorium. We're going to encourage you to grow your business and hire more people. If we couple that with a suspension of the growth management in Mason County, we will be able to allow our county commissioners to exercise those incentives to bring businesses here. Amazon, Microsoft, a lot of these net crafty businesses like having niche spots, really out of the way spots for their engineers to, that have trees and lakes and all the opportunities that we have here in Mason County and the 35th District. They like those things because it gives them a relaxing, creative environment to work in. If we said you're tax-free in the timber, the areas that have been hurt by the reduction in the timber production, say maybe Grays Harbor County, Mason County, Thurston County, Kitsap County, those type of counties, what we can do is allow us to stimulate our job opportunities, grow the opportunities for our sons and daughters, grandchildren, so they don't have to move away from our community, and allow them to help us build what we love.
Are you in favor of increasing the minimum wage? If so, how would you propose to go about raising that wage to lessen the impact on small business?
I'm in favor of family wage jobs. I absolutely am. The minimum wage, raising the minimum wage right now, I think is a mistake, and I'll explain why. Very small percentage, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that there's very small percentage of the population actually make minimum wage. Out of that, about 40% are those new to the workforce, so those that have limited skills and need an ability to train at a lower wage, so the businesses can grow that individual's knowledge base. The others are those that are in college, about 30%. So a very small percentage of the population is actually at minimum wage right now. I don't favor crippling telling a business that you have to do this. I think since we know the fact that very few or very small percentage of the working population actually make minimum wage, we understand that business realizes once they train somebody that they now have intellectual property that they have to pay more money. And since they have to pay more money to those, they know they have to pay more money, they're willing to keep that intellectual property. So the other thing the Bureau of Labor Statistics has brought out is the cost of raising minimum wage. And what we found with those of you who are in the workforce now, we know that the healthcare law has seen people that were working 40 hours a week reduced to 20 hours a week. We will see similar impacts on increasing the minimum wage, and we've thrown out $15. We've seen $13. We've seen all of those thrown out there. Increasing the minimum wage will force the employers to force their employees to do more with less help, and I think it's going to hurt the working poor more than it helps.
All right, Dan, that's all the questions we had for you. Dan Griffey, he's running for 35th District State Representative, position number 1, prefers the Republican Party.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking some time.